Well, hello again, everyone. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you at a greater length about safety and innovation. Please let me start by thanking the Fire Protection Association of Israel and my very good friend Shmuel for inviting me back to share some perspective with you today. I'd also like to thank the association's board for making their commitment to making codes and standards a priority in Israel and for their determination as they continue to build a solid fire, electrical, and life safety infrastructure throughout the country. The way we all work has changed dramatically over the last 21 months. I'm sure you've spent some time talking to your peers at the conference about the changes you've seen, the work practices you've altered, and the ways that coronavirus may have affected your business model indefinitely. Think about all those and stopgap solutions and conversations that have evolved since March of 2020. Think about the repurposing of all the various spaces, the establishing satellite sites and reconfiguring healthcare settings, places putting inspection, testing, and maintenance on hold and addressing new storage challenges for all the material. NFPA staff done a great job of getting out in front of these issues during this precarious time in history so that we could meet stakeholders like all of you where they were. We worked hard to provide subject matter expertise that you and others around the world have come to expect from NFPA. Chances are the pivoting that took place during the pandemic will influence future editions of NFPA codes and standards, and our safety infrastructure will be better because of the lessons learned during a precarious time. Meeting the needs of safety professionals and practitioners is not new for NFPA. In fact, it's been the cornerstone of our organization for more than 125 years. That's right, NFPA turned 125 years old this year. Not too many organizations today harken back all the way to 1896. So we're certainly taking the time to honor this landmark event. One of the benefits of celebrating anniversaries is looking back and reminiscing. And when we consider our long storied history, one thing is certain. NFPA did not get to where we are today without safety influencers like all of you. Safety is a system, and we've been making that point for several years now with the NFPA Fire and Life Safety ecosystem. And without question, we all play a role in safety. So please, before I go any further, let me say thank you for the work that you do every day to protect people and property. It matters tremendously. See, for NFPA, we began to take shape when a solution was needed for the numerous ways that sprinklers were being installed in the new industrialized world. 9 radically different standards for the size of sprinkler piping were being used within a 100-mile radius of Boston. It's creating chaos and consternation. Getting to a common standard resulted in NFPA 13, the standard for the installation of fire sprinkler systems. It was the first standard created by NFPA back in 1896. Sprinklers evolved somewhat, but the technology, well, it remained relatively the same for 70 years. Then in the 1970s, we saw some changes with the emergence of fast response sprinklers and residential sprinklers. Those technologies led to ESFR sprinklers in the late 80s, innovations that allowed for better protection of storage arrangements from ceiling-only protection. These days, we don't wait 70 years to make adjustments in safety. Innovation, it seems, comes in spurts, and it often comes about from circumstances. For example, more recently, we've witnessed a boom in warehouse construction. The dramatic uptick in e-commerce has spurred changes in product materials and packaging, resulting in non-traditional structures being used for all of that e-commerce inventory. According to recent research, higher storage arrangements in warehouse settings and industrial spaces were needed to meet a 44% jump in e-commerce spending in the US alone in 2020. That's the highest annual e-commerce growth in at least 2 decades and nearly triple the 15% jump that happened in 2019. This market demand has prompted the need for more warehouses and the need for fire suppression to be in lockstep with those storage trends. Other trends have led to new standards development as well. The development of NFPA 915, that's our standard on remote inspections. It's currently underway. NFPA 915 is going to address inspection standardization and record retention, among other considerations. During COVID, The safety inspection sector, like so many other industries, was forced to rethink how to operate in a vastly changed landscape. Remote video inspection, or RVI, it's an idea that's been around for nearly a decade. Well, it became now a viable solution. Some inspection departments reported unexpected increases in efficiency, added safety, and in some cases even better visual access to a project than they were getting by traditional in-person methods. We also have a committee working right now on the development of criteria for NFPA 200, the standard for hanging and bracing of fire suppression systems. NFPA 200 applies to the use and installation of components and devices used for the support of fire suppression systems. Protection of fire suppression systems and devices against seismic events will also be established in that standard. Another thing's creating a buzz is cybersecurity. Because of this, NFPA codes and standards are increasingly addressing the digital transformation and the byproduct of these solutions, the data being generated and captured. To help inform audiences, the Fire Protection Research Foundation, that's the research affiliate of NFPA, they released a new cybersecurity report that looks at integrating digital solutions and smart technologies into building management systems and potential security issues. NFPA codes and standards that include cybersecurity references today. For example, the 2022 edition of NFPA 13, it contains language for the first time about the use of electronically activated sprinklers. These days, some sprinklers are designed to address these fires that are in higher hazard storage protection, including exposed expanded plastics. So as I understand it, local heat detectors are wired to the sprinkler actuator. They constantly sample the air temperature to identify a fire event early on. When a fire event occurs, the system electronically activates sprinklers in a specific pattern around the fire based on the algorithms programmed into the releasing panel. The new technology ensures that only the sprinklers that will be effective in suppressing the fire will activate so that it limits both fire and water damage. NFPA 72, the National Fire Alarm and Signaling Code, also comes into play here as well, since there will now be electronic components and heat detectors in sprinklers. And on the water-based side, automated testing is heavy in NFPA 25, our inspection, testing, and maintenance standard for sprinkler systems. But the installation system standards, such as NFPA 13, 14, 15, and 16, well, they're now also catching up and adding allowances for the installation of automated testing systems and components. Both NFPA 25 and NFPA 20, it's the fire pump standard, they now recognize smart technology by featuring language in their most recent editions about remote automated testing of systems or components. Again, this is the intersection of technology and the Internet of Things and fire protection, and it's moving rapidly. Our technical committees are having to look at the task in front of them with a much more digital lens. Now, just a quick statistic for you since I mentioned our codes and standards and technical committees. The task of developing the 325 plus NFPA codes and standards, well, that falls to volunteers from 42 countries who fill more than 9,000 technical committee seats. We at NFPA are grateful to all of those that lend their expertise to the standards process. So I've been talking a lot about how standards are changing in light of technology and impacting everything we do. But maybe to understand the full impact of codes and standards, let's spend a few moments envisioning what our world would be like if codes and standards did not exist. Fundamentally, without codes and standards, we'd have no recognized minimum threshold for public safety in the built environment. Now think about this for a moment. How would a local resident who's walking into their new apartment building know whether it was as safe as the one across the street? How would a worker in a factory know whether their workplace featured acceptable ventilation or proper egress in case of an emergency? Sure, the average person can look up at the ceiling and see sprinklers, but will they know if they're the right type? They simply trust that the sprinklers will discharge the right amount of water if fire breaks out. Does it even cross their mind as to whether or not they're safe? You see, the public in a large way takes safety for granted. Now, in fact, the public likely doesn't understand the role that codes and standards play. They simply expect that all of you, the engineers, the installers, the inspection departments, have all done their job to keep them safe. See, I can sleep on the 68th floor of a hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada in the US, and I can feel comfortable that I'm safe. But if there were no codes and standards, and I was simply hoping that the thousands of design and construction decisions were all being made with my safety in mind, rather than any financial implications they might have, well, if I were in that hope, I might very well just ask for a first floor room. Without codes and standards, what would plan review in the building acceptance process look like? How would General Didi Semenci, the Israeli Fire Protection Commissioner, or one of his staff members perform plan review without a recognized standard as the backdrop for that review? Would it be done by the insurance company, third-party engineer? Would there even be a formal review process? Contractors and consultants, how would you make design decisions that you feel comfortable with? What would guide your decision-making on delivered density or on obstruction rules for sprinklers? What about without a standard, what would your error and omissions policy look like? So peace of mind from standards is not just important for the public, but also for practitioners of standards, just like all of you. Authorities having jurisdiction accept and trust when a standard specifically allows a new product or design methodology. Would it be that easy to implement a new approach without an internationally accredited standard recognizing it? A good example of this is that electronic operated sprinkler technology I spoke about earlier. First question an authority having jurisdiction will ask is, does NFPA 13 allow it? See, they don't have the time or the people power to understand the nuances of this new concept. They just want to know, is the standard okay with it? Imagine trying to sell all the new concepts that are created to each authority on each project with a different insurer. Imagine trying to sell all the new concepts that are created to each AHJ on a different project with a different insurer. The standards process takes that pressure off your plate. It allows internationally recognized documents to do what they do best, to standardize. Okay, let's delve a little bit further into your industry. Without codes and standards, I think we'd all agree that there'd be a lot fewer sprinklers in the case of fire protection. Probably very few outside of higher hazard commercial properties or maybe warehousing. We know that fire protection and sprinkler system requirements have historically been and continue to be in many countries simply insurance driven. Being able to look at fire data over the last century, that's helped to lend support to the standardizing of fire safety overall. Can you imagine if we left decision-making to business owners or the proprietors? By and large, they would conclude, well, I'll never have a fire, so why would I need sprinklers? But thankfully, the data has proven otherwise. It's shown that if we did not have standards to require fire protection systems, property owners would not only put their own facilities at risk, but they'd put their neighbor's building and countless lives at risk as well. I look at it like this. What would the highway look like without any speed limit? Sure, there are some people that can drive safely at 105 miles an hour. There are other logical drivers of maybe 70 miles an hour, but let's all agree that we would have a lot of fools endangering themselves and others if these limits, informed by data, didn't exist. Leaving it up to the individual to self-impose safety limits simply because they own the car would and almost assuredly could endanger others. Imagine too if we let the owner of a facility set their own fire safety thresholds without a standard to guide them. Given the opportunity to buy new curtains or carpeting over fire safety, probably few owners who would choose the latter. Here's something that always hits a nerve. Think about getting owners and facility managers to engage in inspection, testing, and maintenance. Think how difficult that is now. Imagine if there was no standard to establish these frequencies. The weekly diesel or monthly electric churn test for a fire pump would probably just be rolled into the annual flow test, which probably wouldn't happen every year anyway. I hope these examples help demonstrate how codes and standards not only make your professional lives easier when tackling day-to-day activities like design and approval, that you recognize that codes and standards are the mechanism by which we gain buy-in and compliance for safety. That's exactly why the Director of Standards Administration at NFPA met with the Fire Protection Division at the Israeli National Fire Rescue Authority a few weeks ago. Codes and standards are designed to keep people and property safe. So as you network with one another during this conference, think about the value of codes and standards. Talk through it. I'm sure you'll come up with far more examples than I touched on today. And I hope you'll carry the message about the importance of standards as we go forward. As I begin to wrap up my remarks today, I want to point out that one of the greatest things about celebrating a milestone anniversary is that it allows you to look back in time and not only recall the different touch points that shaped an organization, but shaped the wider industry that was served. NFPA, we're mindful of the past, but we spend most of our time focused on what the future means for our organization and for the wide range of audiences that we serve. So we're always working to improve the safety outcomes. One of the key lessons that we have learned is that people learn differently than they did 10 years ago, let alone 10 decades ago. Today, professionals access information in diverse ways. There are the code aficionados who know every element of industry standards. There are learners who prefer at-a-glance content. There are fans of our technical blog and digital disciples that are looking for interactive solutions. The latter, it's led our association to revolutionize the delivery of codes and standards and to become much more of a digitally and globally connected authority. COVID only enhanced our efforts to provide online solutions to stakeholders. By giving professionals and practitioners online access to insights and information, we're better positioned to realize our vision of eliminating death, injury, property, and economic loss due to fire, electrical, and related hazards. For these reasons, and because of our global mission, we've transformed from a codebook publisher into a digital solutions provider. The centerpiece of our transformation is a product called Nfpa Link, which we launched just a year ago. Today, the current version of every NFPA standard is in Link. We're increasingly adding enhanced situational content and translated guidance. And as new codes and standards are released, they too will be added into Link. It's a one-stop digital solution that's changing the face of safety and the trajectory of NFPA. Link is the way all of our standards will be available to you and your colleagues in fire protection, building life safety, and in every other industry that NFPA touches. The new digital platform offers a navigation tool. It offers the ability to bookmark publications and provide quick links for your reference. Imagine viewing various pieces of content side by side on your screen. All you have to do is pin a piece of content and you can view it and what it references. You can access the saved content, delete it, or make it smaller or larger on screen, whatever it is that you choose. Enhanced content, including our expert commentary and visual aids that provide often needed context to our standards. So many have indicated that they need these when they're in the middle of the job. Well, they're in Link as well. We've set up Link so that there are individual, team, and enterprise subscriptions, with the latter two allowing admin users to invite others to join the team. And if you change your mind on users, cancel the invitation to join or remove the user at simply the touch of a button. I'm especially excited to tell you that we now offer offline mode, which means that Link subscribers can now access and store codes and standards and bookmarks and notes and enhanced content. You can store it on your device and be able to view it without being connected to the internet. NFPA Link is the future of the delivery of codes and standards. So if you haven't taken the free 2-week trial of Link, sign up. See what Link can do for you. Our codes and standards are not the only resources that are going digital. NFPA training and certification offerings that are embraced internationally, well, those are increasingly online as well. It is simply a way of this digital world that we're now in. Even NFPA Journal, our award-winning membership publication, well, it's gone digital. Our talented team of journalists are now posting exclusive online articles, podcasts, and learn something new videos on a regular basis so that the trends and innovative ideas are posted in a timely manner. As I said at the outset, the goal of NFPA back in 1896 was to meet stakeholders where they were. And that today, and it'll certainly continue to be our guidepost well into the future. Digital allows us to do more for more people. It'll help us achieve new milestones during our next 125 years in business. I hope you'll check out the more global, connected version of NFPA. After all, as I said earlier, knowledge is power, and information and insights are just a click away at www.nfpa.org. I want to thank you for your time today. I wish you the very best in your conference, and I look forward to being able to see you in person at some point in the future. And remember, it's a big world. Let's protect it together.